Hiraku awakens earlier after dreaming of his demise in his world. He steps outside and greets everyone, mentioning that he never anticipated living such a dreamlike existence. As a spirit, Hiraku confronts the deity that oversees the world. The deity observes that he lived for 39 years, being betrayed by others and subsequently succumbing to a terminal illness. The deity resolves to offer him a second opportunity with a body that will not suffer from sickness, and expresses a desire to apologize, asking him if he has any wishes that could also be fulfilled. Hiraku expresses his desire to try his hand at farming. It receives permission from the agriculture deity to grant Hiraku the power of the supreme farming tool. Hiraku finds himself waking up in a forest and feels joyful to be healthy and to be able to move once more. He decides to embark on his farming journey there, contemplating how to utilize the supreme farming tool. The tool magically appears in his grasp, and Hiraku begins digging, noticing that he feels no fatigue whatsoever. He appreciates the softness of the soil and realizes he can cultivate excellent vegetables there. Hiraku then understands he must prioritize food and water and sets off to explore. He spots a large tree and decides to make it a point of reference and use it as a camp. He searches for a river but cannot locate any source of water. Hiraku then opts to dig in hopes of finding underground water. He summons his tool, which transforms into a shovel, and shortly after starting to dig, he discovers water. While preparing the area around the tree, Hiraku seeks food but finds nothing. Hiraku then notices a smaller tree that will eventually obstruct him and opts to fell it now. He summons his tool as an axe and narrowly avoids being crushed by the tree as he manages to cut it down with a single blow. He changes his tool into a hatchet and then slices the tree into smaller pieces. Before he realizes it, dusk is approaching, and he turns his tool into a magnifying glass. But the sun sets. With no method to ignite a fire, he carves a hollow into the large tree and conceals himself inside. Hiraku fashions some plates and cups. He realizes the moon gives sufficient light for him to see, but then observes that there are two moons, and surmises he must be in another world. In the morning, Hiraku keeps clearing the area around the large tree and cuts down additional trees. He feels it's time to find something to eat, and at that moment a huge monster rabbit attacks him, which Hiraku manages to kill with a single swing of his tool. After consuming it, he decides to construct a toilet and digs a sizable hole with an entrance and uses a tree trunk as a seat. Because he couldn't relax, he ends up building a small cabin around the toilet seat. Hiraku then begins cultivating the land and envisions what he could grow. Once he finishes, he realizes he doesn't have any seeds to plant anything. The next morning, he is astonished to notice that some plants have already begun to sprout, and he wonders if it is because of the tool. He resolves to build a wall and a ditch around the fields to protect them from the rabbits and other creatures. It takes him several days to finish. The plants grow more quickly, and Hiraku hopes that they are something edible and not just decorative flowers. Hiraku then constructs a hut, but since he struggles to lift the wood up, he digs inside of it to allow himself more vertical space. One day, he spots two dogs outside. As they appear a little rough and non-aggressive, he invites them in and offers them some meat from a boar he has just slain. He observes that one of them is pregnant, and after they have eaten, she begins experiencing birth pains. Hiraku realizes she is about to give birth and contemplates what actions to take. He ultimately decides to let them stay in his house while he retreats back to the tree hole for the night. In the morning, he checks on the dogs and notices that the female has given birth to 4 puppies. He provides them with more meat to celebrate this occasion. Hiraku thought the dogs would leave afterward, but they choose to stay. As they enjoy the hut, Hiraku decides to build himself a new home. Hiraku eventually grows some tomatoes and takes pleasure in them. The dogs go hunting and safeguard the premises for Hiraku. Hiraku wishes to construct a storehouse, cultivate more vegetables, and many other things. God chooses to check on Hiraku to see how he is doing, since he feels guilty for giving him a life suited for a sinner. During his observation, he discovers that he placed Hiraku in a perilous forest known as the Forest of Death, and recognizes that he has made another error. Hiraku realizes that while he is preparing the soil for farming, if he desires to plant a particular crop, that crop magically begins to grow. Hiraku is content with his life and acknowledges that it is thanks to the gods who granted it to him. He creates some statues of the 2 gods to express his gratitude. Hiraku decides to experiment with planting some fruits. As they grow, he enjoys playing with the dogs, recognizing that he would feel much lonelier without them. Since the dogs also assist him in navigating back to his camp, Hiraku is able to venture further into the forest and ultimately discovers a river. He plans to create a tunnel to bring water to his site, and first decides to construct a toilet near the river. Hiraku figures out that if he transforms his tool into a wheelbarrow, he can maneuver with it without tiring. He also expands his crop fields by adding more vegetables. He cultivates soybeans and wishes to consume them, but he lacks salt. As time goes by, the weather begins to turn cold. Observing snow on the mountains, Hiraku ponders how frigid it gets here. He resolves to start getting ready for winter by gathering food and firewood. A giant spider appears. However, it is friendly and makes a handkerchief for Hiraku. The spider then chooses to inhabit the large tree and enjoys eating potatoes. In return, the spider crafts him clothing using the animal pelts that Hiraku provides. With the addition of cloth, Hiraku feels more civilized, as he now possesses a comfortable bed, curtains, and clothes. Hiraku decides to name the spider Zabuton. The winter begins. Zabuton no longer descends from the tree, and Hiraku suspects he is hibernating. Hiraku experiences a sense of loneliness, but eventually summer arrives. The small dogs have grown up, and one day they depart, but they quickly come back along with companions. Shortly after, Zabuton appears as well and brings children with him. With more mouths to feed now, Hiraku opts to enlarge his crops once again. Zabuton sounds the alarm, and Kuro guides Hiraku into the forest. Kuro leads him to a little girl who is unclothed and caught in spider webs. The dogs and spiders are cautious of her, but when she calls for help, Hiraku chooses to assist her. As he approaches, she leaps and bites his neck, subsequently transforming into a young woman. Hiraku questions whether she is a monster. The dogs then assault her, and as they strike her, she reverts to a small girl once more. Hiraku ponders whether she is their adversary since she drank his blood, but the girl clarifies she isn't and needed to do that to regain her strength. As she expended too much energy, she cannot sustain her adult form or clothing. Hiraku wonders why the dogs attacked them, and she states she wished to take one of them. Feeling sorry for her, Hiraku permits her to take more of his blood so that she can recuperate. Hiraku brings her to his home. The girl is astonished to find a crop field within the forest, particularly with so many new crops. Hiraku offers her a tomato, which she enjoys and expresses interest in trying additional crops as well. The girl shares that her name is Rurushi, a vampire, and is thrilled to sample a variety of new vegetables. Ru explains that she is working on medical research and escaped after getting into a conflict with some nobles who attempted to seize her research. Since they continued to pursue her and she learned about this forest, she chose to hide here temporarily until things settled down, while also hoping to discover new plants to study. She is amazed that Hiraku is residing in such a perilous forest and has even tamed the creatures. He is also utilizing some unusual magic that enables him to create various tools, which excites her even further. Hiraku understands how exceptional his opportunity is, since this is the first individual he has encountered. Since it might take longer to find someone else, Hiraku chooses to ask Ru to remain and live with him. Ru attempts to clarify that there are people pursuing her and that she is a vampire, but Hiraku remains indifferent. Hiraku articulates that he came here to be alone as he struggles with social interactions, but now he recognizes that he does not wish to be solitary and is uncertain about how much more he can endure. Ru consents, explaining that she does not actually have a place to go, even though she feels shy about his suggestion. The following morning, Ru appears a bit younger. Hiraku is intrigued, and she clarifies that in this state, he will refrain from making physical contact with her, to which Hiraku concurs. Hiraku states his next intention is to cultivate some sweet potatoes. He also mentions that Ru is the first villager he has encountered. Kuro disputes this, prompting Hiraku to amend his statement, saying she is more like the 30th villager. Ru inquires if Hiraku can cultivate some medicinal herbs, and Hiraku agrees to give it a shot. Ru mentions they need to find the appropriate seeds somehow, but Hiraku insists that he does not require seeds.